Welcome all. Our discussion on Chandogyopanishad Chapter 6, where we have to learn what is the meaning of Tattvamasi. That the what is the topic of this room. And in the last three sessions, we have gone into the first part, which is Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, which is mandatory. Even though it is an upasana or a meditation, it was mandatory to know that. Then only the import of the word Tattvamasi can be understood. And that is why when the sixth chapter, which we are dealing with, started, we had this father-son dialogue going on. And then we are in the second pada, or the second section of the sixth chapter, where it started with Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asid. So that we will continue today. So before that, let me do the Shanti mantras. ॐ नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणचक्षुश्रोत्रम् अथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदम् माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु निराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, to the conclusion of the last class, we concluded that it was the non-being only which was negated when it has been used for the purpose only for the denying the possibility of the wrong notion that, people may entertain that the name and form, that is what is called by the non-being. In the particular context, the non-being doesn't mean non-existent thing. Here we should understand that non-being is not the fundamental form, but as the appearances in which we experience them as names and forms. To negate that is that way, that when you negate that, what remains is only the pure fundamental form, or what is called the Sat. That Sadeva Saumya Idam Agravasid Ekameva Advitiyam. That Sat alone was in the beginning. Ekam and Advitiyam. It was only one. There was no second one. So why should they repeat the word again? Ekam and Advitiyam. To make the fair instruction very, fundamentally non-disputable in the way that without a second, when it is only one, that means all this is what is there before and now are only one ekam. Therefore, if you are seeing a second one, you are not seeing the truth. So we had that example of names and forms of the jar and other earthen products from a lump of clay. The lump of clay and the jars are the names. One is from where the jars come up, one is the final form of the jar. But for both the lump of clay as well as the jars, there was only one, that is what is called the clay or the mud. So, Mrittigateva Satyam, Vacharampanam Vikaro Namadeyam, Mrittigateva Satyam. It is all in the name of name, and it is in the name and form we see the multiplicity. We do not see the underlying oneness with from where it has appeared to have come. Now, so from when you negate the names and forms, what will remain is this. This is the common name which we can use for everything. Other than me, everything is this. So this is what we experience for anything other than ourselves. That form is that the common name this. In the deep sleep, if you look at it, neither could I tell that I am there or this is there. So what happened to this and myself in the deep sleep? When we get up from the deep sleep, we have a revelation or a knowledge that we had a sleep, but that state was indescribable because neither was I there nor there was something which I can say as this. So that is the state which is being referred here as agre, means before, ekam and advitiyam. There was only one, and that where this and I became one. In the deep sleep, that this and I became there. This world which I am experiencing in the waking or the dream, and I as the experiencer, both did not separately exist, but at the same time, we all of us cannot deny the experience where the unison took place. So that is the state which is called the that state, Sat Avastha. Sat means the truth, or that you can say Tat also. That is the beauty of Sanskrit. You can say Tat, Sat, and Satyam. There is no difference when we use it, but it is used in different connotations. So from that point of view, when we were in our primordial condition, when the world merged with the experiencer, the state was the experiencer was not separate, the world was not separate. Ekameva Advitiyam, the non-dual oneness alone existed. That was an experience with indescribable experience because the experiencer was not there, therefore it cannot be called even an experience. But at the same time, when we wake up, we cannot deny that we did not have a deep sleep. In that is the predicament we are all facing when we wake up. We cannot deny the experience. At the same time, what experience cannot be described. This is because in the waking, when we experience this and I, that is what is called making the world. So this experience of this and I in the waking should have come from that state where there was no this or I. That is why it is called Ekameva Advitiyam, one and without a second. Now the son asks a question to the father. If that is the case, when you say that from non-being and negating, all this came up, kutaha tu kalu saumya evam syat iti sahovacha katam asataha sajjayate iti. Sadtu eva saumya idamagra asit ekameva advitiya. So the dialogue between the father and son is taking place. But how indeed this could have happened, my dear? How could being be born from non-being? So here you should understand that non-being is the state where there is no names and forms. Non-being is not a shunyata which we have negated in the last class. We are not talking about the shunyata or the nihilist or the Buddha is talking about non-existence. It is not a non-existence. The non-existence of names and forms is the non-being. So, can the world which you say Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma can be bought from that state where it was not being or without any names and forms? No, my dear. It was being alone that existed in the beginning. Sattu eva soumya idam agra asid. And in what form? As the qualifications of one and one without a second. Ekam and Advitiya. Now Shankara goes into detailed discussion on that. How could it be possible that being should be born from non-being? That is a question which came up. The meaning is that there can be no proof for a reason of such a view. That is, from non-being, a being can be born. It is true that the example which is being taken here is that of the sprout and from the seed. The sprout is seen to appear only when the seed has been destroyed. So the word destroyed, the seed is destroyed for the sprout to appear. Now that the question is the word, see, all this is because we do not take the right meaning of what is happening due to what you call non-logical acceptance of terms and terminologies in our world. Does the seed really get destroyed to become the sprout? No. The seed itself is what is becoming the sprout. The name and form of the seed would have gone from our perception, but the constituents of the seed has not been lost. That is what is appearing now as the sprout. So when you say that, there are people who are arguing that the nasham or the destruction of the seed, that is then only you can get the sprout. Only the seed destroys. Suppose seed refuses to destroy, then the sprout cannot come. It is from negation alone that things are produced, is the argument by such people. As a matter of fact, the constituents of the seed which occupy the space, etc., in the seed continue to exist even when the sprout is growing. There is no destruction of the seed and its constituents when the birth of the sprout is taking place. Because the reason is that the appearance of the seed as a seed was due to the constituents in the seed with a special form. That form was given a name as seed. The same constituents inside the seed, when starts sprouting, we call it as sprout, and we don't see the form of the seed, so we assume the seed is destroyed. So from a destroyed seed, never can a birth of a sprout take place. What is destroyed on the birth of the sprout is the shape and form of the seed. The existence whereof is admitted by the Shunyavadin, where this is one of the examples what the Shunyavadin or the Buddhists, they take it as is due to illusion which they have not understood properly. The illusion is that the death of the seed. Therefore, from the death, the sprout has come. Only when the seed destroys, the sprout can come. Shankara says it's an illusion. But what is this illusion? Is it a positive or a negative thing? That illusion is a negative thing. In fact, the illusion itself has no locus standi. There is no ground for the notion that the sprout has grown out of negation, because the sprout is actually produced out of the constituents of the seed. So how can there be an illusion? There cannot be an illusion. The positive entity based upon illusion of the sprout is from reality of the seed, which itself is a positive entity. And therefore, never can a non-existence or the death of something, from that something else can come. No, that can never happen. So we have to understand that when this thing that Asat is a name, what is meant is the name and form of the seed is the state of Asat, which Sat of the sprout. Same is the case for the world. In our deep sleep, when the names and forms are not there of the world, of the individual also, it was supposed to be a non-existence of the world and the individual. But it doesn't mean that there is no existence, because existence is very much in its primordial, one without a second state. That is why when we wake up, we have that experience that the positive entities which are there as experienced as a deep sleep without knowing anything, that oneness without a second is our experience. That so these are things which are we have to understand, because there is no other humanly explainable experience or as an example where we can bring that state to imagine even how the world would have existed before creation without name and form. The only example which we can take is that of our deep sleep. So the using the deep sleep, we have a fairly graspable and idea-wise understandable situation. And what was that state when it was in the being, when one without a second? It was awareness in itself, because there was nothing else was there to be aware of. I ekameva advitiyam. There was no two there. At the same time, we have to say ekam was there, because we cannot deny our own existence or the experience of the deep sleep. Even we cannot say our deep sleep. In the deep sleep, I am not there, you are not there. Whoever is in the deep sleep, he has no existence in the for any way. You can call it as by surname, the common name this, or any specific name. So, but at the same time, we cannot deny we didn't have that deep sleep. Therefore, it is Sat is a positive aspect, and the Asat is the absence of the names and forms. Those who uphold the non-being, there is no instance to show for by them that non-being as an entity. Because unless there is an entity with which you can say this is non-being, Satkaryavadins or those who are in the Sankhya philosophy, they do not accept that the non-being is an entity. The jar which is produced from clay, which is clear from the fact that the jar is there when only the clay is there. Same way, anything if it has to be experienced, or anything if it is being perceived or cognized as known, there has to be the fundamental reality from which it has to have the dependency. The name and form, the example which yesterday we discussed also, the waves are not different from the water. The ocean is not different from the water. So the fundamental reality is the water. The ocean and the waves are the same. Vacharambanam vikaro namadeya. It is just the names and the appearances of water. Water is because of which we call it as ocean and the wave. So in the absence of the water, nor will there be a ocean, nor there will be waves. Same way, if the clay is not there or the gold is not there, none of the products made out of the clay or the gold has existence. So if there has to be a Sat or a positive entity, from the positive entity only that whatever is coming out can be derived at. Never a non-entity or a non-being can be the fundamental substance from where we can get the experience of something positive. If it is non-existent, you will not get anything out separately, first of all. And even if it is there something, assuming that something comes out of the non-existent, it also has to have non-existence. So how can there be an experience? Hence we conclude that it is not true that being is produced from non-being. We have to conclude that it is not that experience which we feel in the world of objects, this, that, I, you, all these names which we are using is coming from a, from a non-entity which is the sleep, because the place where they are all, diving is that they deny the existence of deep sleep as a non-entity or non-existent state. It is avastu or tucham. The tucham means such a belittled experience of humanity that nobody is ready to even spend even an iota of time on analyzing what is deep sleep. They even the scientific world or even the biology or zoology or wherever you want to say, because it is a state where it cannot be accessed or analyzed, they negate that importance of that. Only in Advaita you will find that we take care of the deep sleep as the fundamental reality for the purpose of extrapolating that to the totality, just as what we have experienced in sleep. So this is how we have to understand that, it is the idea of the clay as the source, that the jar, and same way gold for the ornaments. Even it would be that a positive idea of something will be is mandatory for something else to come out of that. Now the opponent is taking up an argument that what we mean that between the idea of the clay and the idea of the jar, which appear to stand in relation with a cause and effect, there is only an immediate consequence and not an actual relation as a cause and effect. What does it mean by that? It is we don't call it as a cause and effect, like the clay is a cause and the jar is effect, but there is a relationship between them. So Shankara says, no, that is not right. In support of this immediate sequence of the even the nihilist or the Shunyavadins have no corroborative instance for the external world purely from a non-existence. This this jar can never come from a non-existence. Now in the Satkaryavadins they say the jar was present in the clay without name and form, and the name and form was there, but it was not perceived when it was in a lump of clay. This argument is going to be taken up next. But before that, the father is saying that how can this argument of the nihilists be entertained? That is why kutastu kaumya khalu idamagra asada eva idamagra asi. That is why the statement is said that. So when the Satpadi says that this aspect of the world is present in the deep sleep before experiencing it as a world, they have an argument saying that we don't see a jar being produced out of another jar. So we don't see a being can give rise to another being. Now you are saying that the being or the Sat was alone as non-dual in the beginning. Then what it gives out, if you say it is being, such phenomenon is not seen in the world. We don't see a jar giving rise to another jar. So Shankara says it's true. On being, entity is not produced from another entity. It is the same entity which appears in subsistence in another form. Now he gives it, see, this is where we have to understand it very clearly. The Sat, which was in the state of primordial nature, one without a second, has not really become the world. Separate from it. Shankara says that it is that one alone which have now name and form, and we are segregating them based on the name and form. But can you ever say that there is an object without existence, that or without the being or the non-dual Sat? Everything has a reference to the word Sat. When we say that, Kadam, the pot is there, the ornament is there, the animal is there, the humanity is there, everything is there, is a common thing. That isness, what is being experienced, is the fundamental thing, but here now the presence of the name and form, we are confused because of the name and form is the reality. He gives an example. There are certain snakes, when it coils round, it looks like a ball. So the ball doesn't look like a snake at all. But the moment somebody taps on it, the snake uncoils itself and becomes a long snake shape. Same way, the clay, when it appears either as a dust or a lump of clay or as a jar or pot or shed and so forth, it is not leaving the clayness of the clay to become dust, jar or pot or anything. The fundamentality of the substance never undergoes any change. Now, the opponent is not able to accept this aspect. If that is so, and it is one and the same being that appears in the various forms and conditions, then how is it that it is asserted in the text that it existed before being born? Now, see that they play on the words really. Before birth, before creation, it existed in the form without name and form. Ekameva Dvitiyam. Now it has been born in the names and forms. So, then how do you say that it is the being alone or the Sat alone which was there without the name and form is now in the name and form as appearing? So Shankara had to give them a taunt saying that apparently you have not heard what you have pointed out in the beginning of the first mantra, that it is intended by the sentence that in the beginning this was being alone, emphasizing of the positive character of the product denoted by the word this. Sadeva Saumya idam agra asid. This was the word used in the beginning. This universe in the form of being existed. As this is what we said in the first mantra explanation. The operand again asks, in that case, to come to this, that before it was produced, the product denoted by this was non-being or non-entity, and now being, it has came into existence on production. Because I cannot use the word this tree, this jar, this human being, when it was in that before existing. Therefore, the non-existence of the human being, the non-existence of the jar, non-existence of the tree, how can you use that as the cause, that is the primordial cause for the production? And diffuser says that no, it's not that way. As a matter of fact, it is only being or the entity that comes to a subsist and is being spoken as this. Just as the clay itself has comes into subsistence, the clay has not come into subsistence as separate to become the jar and etc. etc. The entity which was there before the world is being experienced as this or I from the deep sleep, is the one which is cognized as the Sat or the truth before it is being perceived through the names and form. As the product is an object of cognition other than the cognition is the cause of its cause. It is not the way in which we look at the thing that we are going to reverse it. We should take it in the way that it is the same clay which is now the jar, same way the Sat which was there without any experience of second one in the before creation or in the deep sleep is now being cognized in the names and forms as not become separately the names and form. The product must be an entity different from the being. Just as cow is different from a horse, then only you can say it is different. A cow is different, a horse is different. But here in this case, the astitvam or the isness which is there without qualification in the deep sleep is now the qualified ones as the tree, the human being, the world of objects. It is the character of the being which pervades equally in all of them. Apparently, the jar is different from the spoon, different from the other products like that. Yet, they have the dependency, or they all have that clayness as the fundamentality in all their existences. If you remove the clay from that, the name and form cannot stand separately. So that should be the way in which we should understand that. In the same way, this whole universe is only being. That Sat. This diverse forms which we are seeing as universe is only that one. It is only the right to assert that before birth it was being only, specifically because every form of the product only on modification based upon words. Words only bring the world of animal, human beings, and the names in the world before which is being used. So the modification is from the Sat. Now we are using the words like human beings, world, and everything. But fundamentally, there is no difference, because when we say that was it, here also we say the tree is there, the human is there, the animal is there, etc., etc. All these statements are being made from the point of view of how they are being called by that, not by their existences. The existences are still there. It is there in each one of them, which was without the name and form existed in the beginning. Now, here the opponent is one more taking some other, saying that, the Veda is that there is a statement, this indivisible whole without parts, inactive, calm, taintless, as declared in such Vedic texts, basically referring to the Chandogyopanishad. What is saying that is that, Nishkalam, Nishkriyam, Shantam, Niravadyam, Niranjanam. Now, in this form, so when it is being used this way, what happens is that is it unborn? It's both inside and outside. That is also there. It is unborn. Ajayamano bahuda vijayate. Not that anjaja. It is ajaha, nityaha, shashwataha. These are the words which are being used by in the Veda. Then how do you say that how can be modified form of the being as one indivisible whole? If that, because you are mentioning and the Vedas are also mentioning that it is indivisible, it cannot become multiple. So Shankara says it doesn't vitiate our position of the indivisible being also. it is possible for modified forms to appear out of those illusory components made of the parts, not in reality, which are created by imagination of man. It is a human construct. This multiplicity is as multiplicity is a human concept in the sense that it is being imagined. How does it getting imagined? Now we have the experience of our dream. What happens in the dream? Dream also we are experiencing multiplicity. Does it happen that they are real? The objects of the experiences of the world is real in the dream? No. They are all but nothing but imagination or that what you call concepts in the mind or the experiences field of experience. All modification is a product of words existing in mere name. The name is in the Sat. Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asid. Otherwise, what they say he said is that Vacharambanam Vikaro Namadeyam Rittigateva Satyam. Here you have to say the Sadeva Satyam. All the whole world of experiences, what we experience in reality, cannot have an independent existence apart from the Sat, which is in the state when it was there before becoming multiplicity. So, when the Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, that statement was made in the 3rd chapter, 14th Pada, where we discussed it before starting the 6th chapter. Now you have to relate between that and here. Why did we say that Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asit, if the one is the only one and without a second, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, how both can be linked between the two? The multiplicity which we are experiencing is an imagination. Even in the imagination, you can see the oneness. The one who sees the oneness has no confusion on that. He sees that the truth in the multiplicity. For him, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, to such a person. For otherwise, our mind will be carried away by the name and form and the utility of them. Vacharambanam Vikaro Namadeyam. That is what happens, and we will never know that the Satyam is Sat. The Sat behind all this thing is that Satchidananda, the same Brahma only, which was before appearing as many. The appearance is also an imagination. It is not really become many. If it has really become many, like the seed has become a sprout, it cannot be considered that it has left that. Here the water without becoming many appears to be many waves, including the ocean when the waves are subsided. Never a time is there we can imagine the wave there are no waves, but imagine for a minute all the waves are subsided. What remains is pure water. That time we can't even call it as an ocean, because ocean is associated with the waves and the form and the bubbles and all. So same way, when the multiplicity being produced, you should understand that it is the imagination or the construction of the mind due to the dependency on the Vacharambanam and the dependency on the name and form. Now this is used by Narada and Sanat Kumara in the 7th chapter. We will discuss that in the name. He starts with the whole thing from the Nama Rupa, from where the name only is how it is starting that. But here we should understand one thing, that Sat is the only reality. And it is what you call it as by you, me, the tree, the world, the name and everything is the same Sat which we call it as by different names. Like the lump of clay or the mud is being called by the jar, or the gold is being called by different ornaments. We should understand that it has not become the ornament. The gold remains as gold, the water remains as the wave. Every aspect of the world is showing us that nothing has changed. It is the same electron, proton, neutron only, which is becoming carbon, which is becoming nitrogen, which is becoming oxygen. The name, the forms are changing. Why does the form change? Because of the association of the way they constitute themselves. Because they are constituting different material, the way they become different elements doesn't mean they have become fundamentally different thing. The fundamental reality of the experience is depend upon the Sat. That is what is to be clearly understood, that this perception is purely being illusory in nature. Then goes to the third mantra onwards. The Upanishad is explaining the experiential world coming down from him to the multiplicity, and then it will explain us how to look from that point of view also, that you will see the truth, that one ekameva dvitiyam in everything. For that, he has to explain how does the creation take place. Tad aikshada bahusyam prajayeya iti tat tejaha asrujata. Tat teja aikshada bahusyam prajayeya iti tadapaha asrujataha. Tasman yatra kvacha shochiti sadetat sadate va purushaha tejasaha eva tadapyataha jayante. What does it mean? Tad aikshada bahusyam prajayeti. May I become many. It willed or it conceived. Let me become many. And may I grow to become many. And with that in mind, it created fire. And that fire conceived further that let me become many, and many further down into many forms. And the water was created by the fire. And now the Upanishad gives an example, but the proof is that whenever a man is in hot, he perspires and the water is produced from the heat. The heat is the cause for the water to be produced. Therefore, the cause relationship between the heat and the water is consumed. Even though some of these examples in these Upanishads are so primordial or primitive in nature, we cannot really, with our present day knowledge, we cannot take it as a literal meaning. We have to take it as a poetic license. So, without delving deep into that, why did the Upanishad talk about? Let us not go into that aspect of it, but how it is being explained by the Upanishad is what is more important to us. So that willed or that conceived from this, no, the origin is from that. The universe is not the primordial matter as you know in the philosophy of the Sankhya. Now, Sankhya has got pradhanam. Pradhanam is the primordial matter. That is and that has no life, or it's an insentient thing. There is Prakriti and Purusha are the two concepts the Sankhyas have. And it is the Prakriti which is becoming multiple. Then Prakriti means not nature. There is a primordial matter. Even though the word Prakriti is used for the nature, Sankhyas do not use it as a nature. They use it for the primordial matter, but it is insentient. Whereas the Purusha is the sentient, the being. And the opponent is that asking that only the being can conceive because it is a sentient thing. The Prakriti or the primordial matter has no way in which it can will. When it can say that let me become many, may I be born as many. will be like the clay desires to become the jar of its own. It is not happening in this thing. So in that case, that it is perceived that unreal, non-existent thing, or is a all or that the jar cannot perceive or even will that let me no, the clay can never perceive and will become the jar or many ornament. Gold cannot desire to become many ornaments. It is not that possible. So how does this happen then? Or if you say that the rope never wished to become the serpent, and even a non-existent serpent. No, that what we assert here is that the being itself is, which is perceived in the form none other than its own through the duality and diversity. This appearance of duality and appearance is poetically, or by virtue of its appearances, where we call it as it is the desire of the what you call the being to become many. Absolutely, there is this separate world is not a separate entity existing. We do not make any assumption of anything named or unnamed other than the being at any point of time or place. Whatever there is in the name and the named, or which is being imagined to be different, is in fact is that being only. To explain this, the word it willed or it conceived or it desired to become many is used for the purpose only that. It is the rope itself which is under the assumption of the serpent, called the serpent, and the clod or the lump of clay is a jar to be spoken as this thing. For those who, however, know that real character of the rope, the snake was not a reality, or the jar has no independent reality, the name and as idea of the serpent or the jar will cease. Because for the one who knows this, for them they know the fundamental thing from where the appearance is coming. The appearance of the jar has come from the clay, or the snake in the rope has come from the rope. One who knows that, he is not deluded by the appearance of the jar or the rope. He may know that, he may see the appearances, but he has the knowledge of the reality. In the same manner, for those who know the real character of the being, the name, that idea of the products of the I am, you are, the world, the shared reality, all those things are possible because it is from the sentient, intelligent being that Satchitananda, these things are appearing and you are perceiving them because it has got that potency of Satchitananda in everything. Now there is this statement from the Upanishad where the Vedic text is said, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, that yato vacho nivartande aprapya manasasaha anikte anireye and all those things. These statements are, it is, if we are to take that, the creation is into that aspect can never be used for explaining something which is with the names and forms. If what the words are failing to describe that and mind cannot go there, so how are you going to connect between a sat or a being before creation which cannot be fathomed by any of the instrument is the fundamental thing which has become the names and forms now? You should not be able to use that philosophy of that without a name and form has now taken name and form, and it has not undergone any change. And all these type of explanation, and now you are saying the fire was born from that. But at the same time, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, which says that the mind cannot, those words cannot speak about it, the mind cannot fathom it. There, the saying that it is Akasha which came first, and now you are saying the fire came first. So there is a contradiction between the two Vedas. Which do you accept? Is there a self-contradictory between the two? Shankara says there is no self-contradictory thing. Here we are not getting into the details of the creational aspect as explained in the Taittiriya Upanishad. For that purpose, the Taittiriya Upanishad has used from that Akasha came, Akasha, Vayu, Vayor, Agni. Here the methodology is to explain the fire and the water and the Annam, which is that basically the same thing. So the presumption is that the fire has come before that fire, the air and the space has come, is understood. So there is no clash between the two Upanishadic statement. Here the important is the triplication of, because it is the triplication, no, what you call the Trivitkarana, which is coming in the third and fourth padas. So the water, fire and the food is taken for the purpose of explaining that. The fire, when it is known in the world, when it burns and cooks, illumines and is red. And when the fire was created, that is where the being has taken in the form of fire is conceived. Because from the fire we are able to make multiple things. Just if it had been Vayu and Akasha, there is no multiplicity things coming out. Only when the fire became from out of Vayu, because of the fire, the multiplicity can be further created. Therefore, to multiply further into many is really in the fire. Only through usage of the fire, we have many modifications on the other things can be carried out. Therefore, we say that fire willed, let me become many. And it created water as one of the constituents, apart from many, which was required for further creation of what? The food and the human beings and the life in the world. Therefore, the water has come out from the fire, or the heat, when it is there, we can see the rain is taking place, and the rain, when it plays, the greeneries are growing. So this is the way in which the fire, the water and the annam or the food is being consumed as the steps of creation. Ta apa aikshanda bahya shyama prajaye mahi iti vata annam asrujanta tasma yatrakva cha varshati tadeva bhuyishtam annam bhavati yadbhya eva tad adhya annadhyam jayante. The water was conceived from the fire, and then water conceived, may I become many. It created food. Therefore, when it rains, there is a profuse food production wherever the rain takes place. The water here is being considered as one of the primordial life sustenance, the reason for life to be sustained in the world. The earth, the water is the mandatory thing. Wherever water is not seen, there is no life being perceived. Therefore, they concluded that water is the fundamental, is the same reality from where the real multiplication takes place further into the annam and the annadaha. Annam is the food, and what is being produced further down by consuming food is called the annada. So the rice, barley and people who eat, they also start producing. The animals, they eat food, they also start producing. So this cycle of becoming, let me become many, is inherent in the life species. Whether it is trees, animals, or human beings, you can see this is very much running through that. So we have to understand that even though these steps are being mentioned, because fire and other things are produced, evolved out like that, from that being is being coming, we should also consider that there is a term called, what is meant is that it was as if elemental substance is being produced has become many. So if you are saying that it is as if being produced, is it figurative? For being also, the convincing must be only figurative, not in reality. Not so, because conceiving or willed or desired by the being can be known only from the words of Veda. Hence, it is not possible to assume that it is figurative. But the opponent asks, if that as being is the cause for the clay, it is impossible to infer, because clay is an insentient product. It cannot will by itself. Hence, it can be presumed that this insentient primordial matter, which is told by the Sankhya's, cannot will with the functioning of the sentient being. So the will or the conceiving or the 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 desire to become must be figurative. In ordinary life, we've seen that insentient things is spoken and treated as insentient, because we do not consider, but we use the word terminology that that building appears to be intending to fall down now, because such things, the building has no intent to fall down, but we use such terminology that such the thing. These are all the when the terms are used that it is willed become, it is not really willed to become many. In fact, it has not become many. It appears to be many. The will to become many is only used from this concept of using that insentient being can have, the jar is intended to become, and the clay is intended to become the jar, or the rope intended to become the snake. All these things are all figurative usages. So the the truth is that the self, which has no desire by itself, can never become many. So the usage what we see here is only to bring the concept that there is the desire to use names and forms by the, the human being for the experience purpose. Therefore, the words are, of course, used by the human beings only. That it is thought that the liberation comes, when does the liberation or the freedom comes from this names and forms and attributions, which we are saying that until such time when one knows that these multiplicity which we see in the names and forms are the word as if. In fact, in reality, it has not become many. Even though the word Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma is used, that everything is becoming, is what you see in that. The Sarvam is in reality cannot, because the nature of the truth is Ekam and Advitiya. So it has not become multiple, like what we are saying in that in the world, like the father gave the parents gave birth to children, so they have become multiple and many. All those things are because we assume that the name and form have independent existence. But the fundamental thing is that the names and forms, the tree, whether it is the animals, whether it is the human being, whether the planets and everything, is dependent on the Sat means the existence and its sentiency. And that is the reason why everything is sentient. The insentient is because it is being felt as insentient, just as we are feeling there is sentiency. Insentiency is also a feeling. In really speaking, neither sentient nor insentient are separate. They are all one and the same. That same Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asi Ekameva Dvitiyam Brahma. That one Brahma is now which is being appeared as if has become many is the way through the quadruplication or the five methods of becoming many, the Taittiriya. They are all for the purpose of bringing from the experiential level to look through the multiplicity to see the fundamental reality. And the one who knows the reality of the fundamental reality, who sees that all this is Sat only, Sadeva Saumya Idavangrasi, such a person is here and now is liberated. There is not a second required for him to become free from the feeling that there is multiplicity, and he will not be attracted by the multiplicity. To such a person, the realization takes place. We will take the third kanda, where it continues the same thing, or the different birth and the things are being explained in that, which we will take it in the next class. Next Wednesday, we will not be having the class. I'm traveling. So next Friday, we will have the class. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Dhanyavada.